Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Wales of Wall Street EnergyWeb video here for you guys today. EWT on the exchange. Before we go into this one, do check out the other videos on the channel, loads of different topics and discussions, and of course don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Welcome back if you are already a subscriber, and welcome to the channel if you are brand new. Hopefully you enjoy the journey with us. So EnergyWeb, one of the interesting projects that we hold in the portfolio, is something that I've held for a few years now. I'm very intrigued and interested in its technological advancements with Web3 energy, particularly in trading. And what I mean by that is carbon trading, the ability to transfer carbon credits to one another across the world via Web3 hotspots and exchanges. It's going to really revolutionize how we do things in a community drive, commercial, and wholesale as well. One of the great things about this potentially is the ability to eradicate those kind of big intermediaries that we have, or the ones that dictate things like standard rates and energy rates and things like this, to have full transparency, verification, processing, etc., which is all the wonderful things, of course, that come with blockchain. There's other things that are very heavily involved right now with the likes of EnergyWeb. Of course, heavily integrated with the European Commission in particular, which is interesting to me. Of course, anything that the European Commission kind of standardizes and provides as a solution tends to get rolled out to all countries within its region and continent. So there's lots of stuff going on there. There's things involved in things like aviation. We've talked about energy in general, so obviously like solar and wind being a prominent area to that, but also things like EV cars, wireless charging, and eSims. We know the partnerships in the past with like Vodafone, for example, the biometric aspect of getting into driverless cars, how that can be achieved, and also the ability to transfer energy when it's not being used, like surplus energy. And that includes cars as well. We'll dive into a bit more about that in a second, because there's news from like a few years ago that has been developing. I've been keeping an eye on it. The most recent update was a couple months ago, and I know that I've got randomly, I know a couple of people across Europe that are working on some really big like maintenance work on roads, and in particular in Germany is quite fascinating right now. I think it orientated in Sweden originally. I don't know what their progress is, but my pals in Germany are saying that everything's going along quite nicely. We'll go into that in a second, because it's all kind of interlacing and really interesting to see how EnergyWeb will have that impact moving forward with this. So what I will start with is this part here. The wireless EV charging roads currently under construction in Germany. So this is off the back of an article a few months ago. The idea behind this eventually is that we will have driverless cars, autonomous cars, which will be utilizing things like blockchain for transactions, for the ability of AI data, for example, traffic, speeds, where is someone needing to be picked up from, and vice versa. And all of that will be integrated into one entire big system, or certainly through usage of various different chains and different applications, but kind of unified under one umbrella, right? And you as a user, you won't have to be like getting your phone out every 5 seconds. In fact, it will all be mostly biometric, used with things like digital identities, for you to be able to literally hop in and hop out of cars, schedule cars. You might even have like, for example, a meeting scheduled. The taxi companies and everything already know. It's already part of the system. So it just picks you up as and when it needs to, based on time algorithm, data, etc. All of these things. It's quite amazing. But one, of course, the big things, the big topics at the moment is climate change and sustainability. To be fair, it's been that conversation for a long time. I remember when I first started my marketing career after university, that was about 12 years or so ago. Everyone still had a big like CSR, corporate social responsibility mechanism in their website, but there was a heavily conversations around offsetting emissions even back then, probably even before then, but that was my first interaction with that kind of thing. And it's certainly something that's developed. I think more and more companies are more conscious about the things that they get in and out, like from supply and logistics for their own companies, for their offices, etc. And that's no different really to the vehicle situation. There's here in the UK, I mean, there's millions upon millions of cars, of course, still in the combustion engine format. This has had an increase over the last few years of EV cars, particularly with the so-called energy crisis that was pretty much made up, to be honest, to encourage these kind of things. Of course, hydrogen on the horizon as well. Very excited about that. I've got quite a few investments in some hydrogen stock and hydrogen companies here in the UK and worldwide. I think it's going to be absolutely huge over the next sort of 20 years or so. But this in particular, as we have an encouragement of EV cars, of course, more and more people are getting little power stations outside their houses. Some are getting solar panels to be able to charge that directly, and that's absolutely fantastic to see these kind of developments. There's obviously still the argument about are batteries efficient, etc. I mean, you can't win, can you, really? Like, do we want to move away from fossil fuels? Probably yes. And then move to something like batteries, but there's always an argument. But, it's a stepping stone approach to try and hopefully improve things as time goes by. Let's be honest, it's only been really about 100, maybe 120 years maximum-ish that cars have actually been around. There was just a very short period of time in our humanity history and in general for technology. So it's quite a fast advancement, and once these things kind of come in and go into fruition, it speeds up, it ramps up quickly. I mean, look at smartphones and stuff, how fast that has developed over even just a very, very small period. Transportation, everything. And I think with this, it's going to be a very similar story. So EnergyWeb can come in with this in relation to how that energy is transferred from one vehicle to another, to the energy systems, to the grids, etc., to other people, to communities, you name it. And it's really fascinating because each of these moments of activity, like we could get into a car, for example, the biometric checks, the cost of that, everything would actually be done via blockchain and all done simultaneously within milliseconds. And each of those moments and each of those purchases or moves or traveling aspects is done as a transaction. We've mentioned this many times in videos before. An action of transfer, a transferable action, transaction, right? It's not always just about finance and transactions. So this is really exciting because this is kind of the reference point to a lot of the chains where they boast about how many transactions per second they can do. People always think, oh, that's not really that much or something because it's just about banking. Like banks must do many, many transactions per second anyway. But the fact of the matter is the cost and the power required for banking and general systems that we have across the world right now, API systems, supply chain, everything on really old management systems, being transferred across to a system like this that can verify and process quicker. As I said earlier, transparency is key. That involves people who are the companies that are buying the energy off the grids, but also us as consumers to be like, hang on a minute, this should not be this price. And actually, because it's based on AI and data algorithm, there shouldn't even be that conversation in the first place. It's similar to how the finance world's going in the coming years as well, that actually all of these historic issues that we've ever had or arguments with companies, etc., about costs and so on and so forth should be eradicated. But this is really interesting from the wireless charging perspective, is that you're then getting into more of a system of efficiency and potentially sustainability. So you're going to see more and more of these kind of roads being built. Now, this one is only particularly 1 kilometer long in Germany, and I would have anticipated perhaps that this is perhaps a urban area, not so much maybe a like a motorway or anything like that. Can you imagine the infrastructure you need to do all these big phases? So let's think about that for a bit as time goes by, how exciting that is if you're invested or looking at companies that are very heavily involved in energy, the transfer of energy and how we buy and sell that, not necessarily ourselves, but where we buy it from, how they do it, and how these kind of companies can integrate and make this really, really sustainable and efficient. And that's one of the main interesting things for me. And linking that to what we just mentioned earlier about biometrics and information and things like this, more and more people around the world are using what they call like eSims. I used it when I was in Israel last year to watch football and stuff. I was over there for about a week or so visiting some great places in Israel. Real eye-opener in some areas. But for me, I was using, I think it was called Arlo or something, or Airlo. I can't remember the exact name of the app, but basically was allowing me to utilize on my device, my smartphone, iPhone, to download 2 eSIMs, one for data, one for calls and stuff, and you pay like a package or whatever. And it wasn't even utilizing the SIM card that I have in my phone that I normally use. And I thought that was quite interesting. It's the first time I've ever used it personally, or ever seen that concept working personally. Many of you out there probably used it for a number of years and going, what on earth are you doing, Simon? Why are you taking so long to use this stuff? But for me, it was really interesting. And it's exactly this principle that, as we move into more and more of a digital world, and the more speed at which things need to be done, Whether this eSIM is kind of in our smartphones right now or in the near future, potentially a chip inside us, and I know it sounds crazy, but these things are very much on the horizon with retina displays and things like that, that actually you could just approach a car that's sitting on the side of the street, belonging to a company, a fleet company, and you just hop in, facial recognition, all this kind of thing. It knows you, who you are, DIDs, or even if it is the smartphone, let's just say the chip thing's not happening just yet. We'll use the smartphone example. Of course, NFC and contactless payment systems is you just get into the car. It knows you. Digital identities, all of these things, passports, driving licenses, whatever. If you have to drive the car yourself or it drives it for you, it doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is these eSIMs, albeit from a networking capacity in this example here on the screen, the eSIMs do have the capacity, massive capacity, to be able to provide and integrate those kind of DID scenarios, meaning that we very much get into the format of smart grids and things like this, and the stacking software that EnergyWeb has to incorporate this, not just in energy, but in the way we have transportation and everything. It's really fascinating, to be honest, in my opinion. I'll leave a link to this particular article. Some of it's a bit techie. I'm going to try and do a video like really based specifically on these kind of technologies. My experience personally in the working environment, I worked heavily with smart home, artificial intelligence and IoT. So this makes sense to me, but I appreciate not to everyone. So I'll try and maybe bring out a simplified version of all this stuff as well. But the point being is that we're trying to transition really from the previous kind of SIM card integrations that we've had for a long time now, to be honest. Even when I was a kid, with all the rubbish phones that we used to have, like the Nokias and stuff, all the way to now where these eSIMs are coming in. And why is that important? Well, it's because they're faster, quicker, they're on a virtual space, the ability to transfer data via cloud and SaaS systems is a lot easier than it was ever before. It's not perfected yet, but it's definitely something that's very much being developed all the time. So you can see here, 3 methods to achieve security. This is a big part of blockchain, of course. Targeting aggregators and original equipment manufacturers, OEM, EnergyWeb identified 3 methods of storing private encryption keys within a device, so firmware, which is not safe and easy to tamper with. Or an embedded secure element or trusted platform module TPM, which would place the onus on OEMs to add integrated circuits, and that was a burden EnergyWeb didn't want to pass down. So they're really taking the problems that we have and trying to initiate solutions for that. So here's an example. EnergyWeb partnered with Kigen, pioneering IoT. This is Internet of Things, basically anything that connects to the internet, to be honest. But in particular with Kigen is very much around the security protocols of this, from eSIM and iSIM hardware. Okay, so mobile virtual network to implement the open IoT safe based solutions. So many crazy words and abbreviations here, which is an open source method for third parties to use EnergyWeb cryptocurrency features to store their private encryption keys and sensitive credentials in the crypto safe enabled through the open IoT safe infrastructure. That is too much wording, guys. Let's calm this down. But yeah, it's very much about, as I said, if you think about your wallet address and things like this, how encrypted they are, and yes, there's an argument to say there's still some great things that need to be improved in the crypto sphere, but the fact of the matter is your encryptions, the way how most chains and everything are very secure right now, utilizing that protocol, blockchain's infrastructure to come in to the technology that we have already today to really integrate and provide a better solution for these kind of things, these kind of avenues. And I think it's really interesting, as we mentioned earlier about efficiency and stuff. Organizations using EnergyWeb's technology can build their applications via the world's first open source technology stack. This is basically the system that EnergyWeb opens up to people like developers, etc., to build these kind of technologies and advancements, focused explicitly on the energy transition towards efficiency and renewable. This enables the ability to provide information to third-party IoT providers via a SIM card, or in this instance, the eSIM, which builds device-level security and can authenticate data for a user's cloud service. Looping back to exactly what we just said a moment ago, the integration of SaaS systems, cloud systems, etc., utilizing virtual device connectivity with these kind of SIM cards, which will be integrated into things like EV cars, into our energy systems, our smart meters, all of this stuff, guys. This is what I'm trying to get to, is that there's a whole big ecosystem building here, and it's very interesting to see that development continue. So of course the energy efficiency is also ploughed through to EV cars in general, and of course this number is growing faster than ever before when we talk about how many EV cars are being utilized worldwide. And this is something, even when hydrogen comes in, will be a massive development in how we process everything, pay for everything, use everything. And EnergyWeb is going to be one of those absolutely phenomenal projects behind a lot of this stuff. And as I said as well, just that transparency aspect, we covered this a few months back. This is the most recent article from the 14th of March, heavily relating to around that actually Los Angeles airport are integrating the supply mechanism technology of blockchain to understand the sustainability and the historic backgrounds of where the fuel and everything's coming from. How can it be more efficient, more sustainable, actually based on data and algorithm, how much fuel is required and not required, all these things, all on one AI algorithm system. But yeah, as I said, with blockchain being able to integrate with the ability for better trading of carbon, better trading of fuel, etc., this will really enhance the economy in terms of travel and tourism, because the airlines, the airports themselves, will be able to condense their costs even further by being really much more savvy with how and where they buy their fuel from. So all these things integrating, guys, I think it's really interesting topic, and I think it's a really interesting project to follow. And for sure we will do some more deep dive videos on the actual integrations of energy in general. But let's go into the chart for EWT, because the last video we did was about a month ago and we were around the $4 mark, and we did mention that we would probably see some significant areas of interest that we could really try and obtain some buy orders, and both of those have come in personally for me. I've always left the drawings on it, albeit they're terrible circles. My point being is that these fib lines tell a story if you also pull back into the history and understand where we have been and where the areas of potential support and resistance can be as well. And once you do those two things together, you start to be able to identify opportunities for accumulation and DCAing. Now, I bought in here and people could argue, well, it came down lower. Well, that's the whole point, is that we've got all this data, this information to tell us that historically there's opportunity at the lower regions. It's absolutely amazing when it goes rising up. Absolutely fantastic. We love it. I don't trade EWT at the moment. I'm just accumulating to try and sell in the future. When I do generally believe in the next few years it could hit that $100, maybe even $200 mark, especially in the momentum of how the industry is going and what EnergyWeb is producing as a technology and a project. But right now I sit there and I go, well, okay, there's opportunities at these various different fib levels. You could argue even at these lower regions where we've got the red one here at 272, and potentially, just potentially, if there's a big market crash again in the coming months, who knows, we could see those lower $2 marks again, or at least around that traction between the $2 and $3 mark. So there's potential there, and there's also potential at slightly lower regions to what we are right now at around the $3.20 mark. We could see it drop down below $3, because that's what we saw back here in January. And even before that, back in July last year, we saw the really low areas of around $2.20. So there's plenty of opportunity to see some areas of interest at these lower regions. But I would actually say that now we're reflecting on this area to see if we can get some support at this current area of around 310. And if we need to just see some stability over the next few days to confirm that, and we might see a bit of a bounce back up to these higher regions again to retest. But for me personally, I actually am looking at some buy orders here. Now we are at these current areas. I haven't put it in yet. I was just literally waiting to see what we do here. But for me, the accumulation over the next couple of weeks, if it does bounce around this area, it's a good DCA opportunity in my opinion. Obviously, that's not financial advice. It's just what I'm doing personally. But as I said, this area could be of interest, or certainly slightly above it. I'm not suggesting these fib lines directly, exactly, but certainly, as I said, you can see these areas of interest. I would say 280 is probably a good check off here. I'm just going to write in here actually 280 just to remind myself, and we'll come back to that, see if that actually came in at any point in the coming weeks. So Obviously, the last 2 days have seen a bit more of an uprise in EWT. Not huge, but certainly 20 pence or 20 cents worth, to see what happens there. The RSIs are really interesting. So the 14 days showing 38, the 28 days showing 43. These are quite low. And as I said, good DCA opportunities. For it to come back down to here, we probably have to see that RSI on 14 come to around 35 and that 28 day to come to around the 40 mark for us to see that. But I'm not angry to be accumulating manually at these current areas with the anticipation that I'll keep some money back just in case it does come down to these lower $3/289, 287 kind of marks. So let's keep an eye out on this. We're on a bit of a downward trend, obviously, since the February mark, which took it up to $5, guys, which is a really great move from 270 to 5. We're now kind of pretty much 3/4 of the way down from that original mark back in January. So again, the indication is there that we're just trying to now identify a new support area. Can it take it from this current level and push us back up again, or will it reject this based on lack of confidence, based on the economy, etc., to lower regions? So we just got to keep a perception of two different areas, the one lower down here and the fact that this might be a good accumulation point just in case it bounced back up. If you're a day trader or a week trader, that might be very beneficial to you, but for me personally, long-term accumulator and holder, it's just about trying to drive as many as I can. I'm staking EWT. I've got an EWT staking video coming out this Friday for those that want to get involved in that. It's really interesting, some good APY available in that as well, and I certainly think especially this year and possibly into next year is a good opportunity to take advantage of that before we start seeing like big bull runs again at some point in that time period. Performance wise, 5% down on the week, not too bad. 20% down on the month, which is kind of understandable and what we would expect because of that big quick high rise within a month up to that $5 mark. The 3 months is still in green, but not massively. So guys, like exactly what I'm replicating in terms of the narrative around here, that it's at a lower good point for potential accumulation, but just be risk savvy, use that DCA mentality, dollar cost averaging, to ensure that, okay, you might be buying at these regions. It might be the first time you're buying into EWT, but just be aware of the history of EWT in the chart, and then conclude as well that actually there is potential opportunity to try and identify some support levels at even lower regions than what we are now. That's all I would say. Just be savvy with it, guys, and be conscious of that. Guys, I'm going to wrap that video up there. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next EWT video very soon. Take care and bye-bye.